Salam everyone. Hidden in the darkest depths of Islamic mythology and the Arabian Peninsula lies a creature of immense strength, a giant, even by Jinn standards, that is feared by other Jinn, and just as evil as a shayateen, or even more. Magicians want to control this Jinn, but only a few do so, as they would be courting death, something their damned souls don't want to experience yet. What's that creature called? A Marid. Though the Quran and the Hadith does mention the Ifrit, it doesn't mention the Marid. Only certain translations of the Quran mention Marids, yet mythologies within the Arabian Peninsula are riddled with stories of the Marids. According to Islamic mythology, Marids are classified as the strongest Jinn, even stronger than the Ifrit. Ifrits are more known for their cunningness and strength, whilst Marid are more known for their strength as they are the strongest of the Jinn tribe. They are described as giants, as the word Marid means giant in Arabic. They have the powers of flight and are known popularly as rebellious devils. Also, according to some folklore, they also have the power to grant wishes. This is probably where Disney's Aladdin draws inspiration from. For magicians to capture and control a Marid is like courting death. It can easily kill the summoner, and usually the magician in question would have to use copious amounts of flattery to control the Marid. That is, if they can control it in the first place. Some sources claim they come in various skin colors, all black, all blue. It varies from sources and traditions, but all of them describe these Jinn as haughty and arrogant. Before Adam, these Marids were one of the first Jinn to rise up against God, which is why, along with the Ifrit and the other Jinn, they are called the rebellious Jinn, because they rebel against God. But we know how that story ended. In Islamic mythology, there are mentions of Marids everywhere, and some even are found to coexist with Hebrew translations as well. For example, there is a story between the Marid and the Prophet Solomon. This story is also mentioned in Hebrew stories. Ashmedai, or his biblical name Asmodeus, was known to be a very powerful Jinn. According to the Bible, he was known to be the king of demons. At first known to be the demon of wrath, later he turned into the demon of lust. In Arab and Persian mythos, he is known as Ashmedai, a lieutenant of Iblis. When Solomon was trying to build his temple, he required the strength of a very powerful Jinn, so he ordered his chief minister Benaiah to capture the Jinn. The Jinn was captured and brought forth to Solomon, and using his ring he captured the Jinn and chained it. Ashmedai was then put to work building Solomon's temple, but he was an unbeliever after all, and when Solomon told him to reject Iblis and proclaim his faith in God, he refused. So Solomon, using the power of his ring, imprisoned Ashmedai into a jar, put his seal on it, and cast him out into the seas. This is where Aladdin draws inspiration from. Marids are again mentioned in another folklore tale, in another mythos. There is a man named Sheikh ibn Mansur, a poet who wants to meet a Jinn to know about their poetry. He rode on his horse and reached a cave he described as having no light, but large catacombs and tunnels. It was later revealed that this cave was actually the garden of Ifrits who accepted the Prophet's message, the group of Jinns mentioned in the Hadith and the Quran that accepted the Prophet's message. He stood outside the cave and didn't enter unless he was given permission. Jinns are very territorial and would take it as an insult if someone wandered into their homes without permission. The Sheikh said, "I have come seeking knowledge on the poetry of the Marids." A voice echoed from inside the cave, "Surely you have found someone acquainted with the matter. Ask what you please." Then the Jinn revealed itself as a man with white silky hair and a grey beard. Sheikh asked him, "What is your name?" To which he replied, "I am Khayshafudda of the Banu Sha'ban tribe, the Jinn tribe that isn't associated with Iblis's race, but to the tribe of the Jinn who existed before humans began walking the earth." After this, they talked about poetry in great length and detail, but I won't bore you with the details. Another source where the Marids are often mentioned is a story about a Sufi saint, Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani. Bushehr bin Mahfuz was a citizen of medieval Baghdad. His daughter Fatima was playing atop their rooftop of their house, when all of a sudden she disappeared. Frantic and terrified for his daughter, he went to the Sufi saint Al-Jilani. Al-Jilani advised the man to travel to the ruins of Kharak in western Baghdad, to the fifth hill, and draw a circle around him. The man did exactly as he was told. Then he sat inside the circle. After a while, Djinns began materializing around him. He was terrified by their shapes and sizes as they passed by him, but stayed within the circle, heeding Al-Jilani's words. Just before dawn, their king approached him on horseback with a vast army. He said, "Oh man, what is your need?" To which Bushehr said, "Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani has sent me." The Jinn king got off his horse, kissed the ground, and sat outside the circle. Bushehr then narrated the tale of this disappeared daughter to the Jinn king. The Jinn king stood up and asked for the Jinn who did this to turn up. A Marid was brought forward to the king. He asked why he stole the girl. The Marid replied that he fell in love with her and wanted her for himself. The king executed the Marid on the spot and returned Bushehr's daughter to him. Now, some of the stories I'll tell you may not seem like the Marid, but again, no one can really tell if they've met one or not. Usually they'll classify them as Djinns and leave it at that, but some of them you can infer to be Marid given that they're literal giants. There's a story on the paranormal side already, which says that in the 90s, a college student was throwing a party with his two housemates. He wasn't interested in the party, and so he walked up to his bedroom and just laid on the bed, with his head hanging just over the side of his bed. He was able to see the ceiling, and if he pulled his head back a bit more, he would have been able to see his entire room upside down. He starts to fall asleep and closes his eyes, but is woken up all of a sudden. In front of his very eyes was a black shadow that he described as being over 8 feet tall with deep red eyes. He looked right into his eyes with a sense of seething anger. The figure didn't speak nor move, just continued to stare at him for about 30 seconds. Within those 30 seconds, that guy felt an intense hatred and was overwhelmed with negative emotions coming from this entity. It didn't speak, yet communicated with him telepathically and made him remember his bad experiences in life. After 30 seconds, the entity vanished and the guy was just frozen in his place for a few more minutes, absorbing what just happened. Later that night, after the party, he met with his roommates and narrated the story. They both looked at each other with embarrassment and narrated to him what happened. They in fact borrowed a book from the college library in the ancient book section on the summoning of Djinns. They thought it was nothing but a joke, but decided to see if they could summon a Jinn. During the party, they read out various summoning spells of the book. Nothing happened and they laughed it off, as nothing serious really. But when their friend narrated to them what happened in his bedroom, they were shaken and embarrassed at what happened. Nevertheless, after that, he didn't experience any sort of paranormal encounters after that. The second encounter is of the US military in Iraq in 2004. A soldier posted his experience of encountering a shadow monster with his team on the battlefield. In 2004, the soldiers' unit was deployed to a supposed ghost town, which was just an old colonial fort from the British Empire times. They were told there was enemy activity and were deployed in the night with night vision and thermal scopes. The streets were empty, the house was warm, and there wasn't any sort of sound except for the wind blowing and the crunching footsteps on the sandy ground. There were kids playing, but their voices were so faint it was barely audible to notice. The soldiers patrolled near the fences of the colonial fort in groups. One night, they were patrolling the fences when one of their guys noticed something moving along with them on the opposite side of the fence. One of them was taken aback and screamed, "What is that?" He repeated, "What the F is that?" again and again, until he ran off in the night in the middle of the combat zone. The rest of the unit finally looked at what the man was pointing at and saw a tall, massive shadow figure with deep red eyes, with slender arms and legs with a narrow waist, looking at them, surprised, as if he was caught. The creature bent down and leapt on the fence, and just hung off it. reducing the distance between it and the units. Everyone froze. No one moved a muscle, yet they were all pointing their guns at the creature. It stayed there for a few seconds, then jumped back off and into the darkness. After some time, they caught up with the guy who ran. He was punished for leaving his post and running away, but the soldier narrating the story said that the soldier who ran away was a competent guy. He had been in situations where he had to shoot enemies at point blank range. He says this wasn't even the scariest situation he's been in, but it was the most disturbing one. Because you know and understand human enemies, but this creature is unknown. No one knows anything about it or even how to fight something this huge, and that terrified him. Marids are usually considered more mythical than the Ifrits, because there is more evidence to their existence in mythology and folktales than it is in religion. Sometimes they're confused with Ifrits because they're both giants, they're both evil, and they both wield immense power. Even magicians tend to refrain from summoning them because they're hard to control and we only listen to immense flattery. But I don't know anyone in their right mind who would even dabble in summoning, even if it's just a joke. But the evidence to their existence is even rarer than the other types of jinns like ghouls and Jinn, because it is rare to verify if someone has actually met a Marid based on their mythological description. I mean, giant jinns made out of fire don't just pop up out of nowhere. It could be that Marids were created to be fictional versions of Ifrit, or that they do exist, but they're very rare. Not many people in the history of mankind have come across them. At the end of the day, only Allah knows best. With that, thank you for watching, please subscribe and take care.